Good morning and welcome to the April meeting of the Board of Psychology for the state of California. Ms. Burns, would you please call roll?
Akoy-Badu.
Good morning, present.
Bernal. Fu.
Here.
Harbsheets.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Jones. Tate.
Here.
Sorry, Phillips.
Here. Thank you
We have
very
a
much.
quorum.
Ms. Bernal has been delayed, but she'll be here shortly. Good morning and welcome to the quarterly meeting of the the California Board of Psychology. I want to ask all of us to please turn our cell phones and other devices to silent. You may notice board members during the meeting accessing their laptops or other devices. They're using their devices to access board meeting materials that are in an electronic format, in keeping with our efforts to move to a paper-light, environmentally friendly process. We've allocated time on the agenda for public comment, and we'll ask for public comment on each agenda item. I ask that you be respectful of our time constraints and the need to conduct and complete the board's business. If there are several members of the public seeking to comment on a particular agenda item, I will set a time limit on each speaker to ensure maximum participation by all in the context of a very busy agenda. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it's the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. I will remind folks later, but in making public comment, the identity of licensees or registrants of the board should be avoided in order to avoid prejudicing future action that may be required in board members. Okay, so item number 3 on the agenda. Oh, I did want to say our mission statement. I did forget that. We have a new mission statement. The Board of Psychology protects consumers of psychological services by licensing psychologists, regulating the practice of psychology, and supporting the evolution of the profession. Our values are transparency, integrity, fairness, responsiveness, and professionalism. Okay, well, item 3 on the agenda is bittersweet. Part of that is going to have to be deferred till Friday morning as Ms. Jones could not be here with us. But I wanted to take more than a moment to acknowledge the contributions of an outgoing board member, Dr. Lucille, or Ms. Lucille Akoy-Badu. I gave you an honorary doctorate. And then I'd like to briefly read to you a certificate of appreciation and then have Dr. or Ms. Akoy-Badu come up and accept it. This is a certificate of appreciation presented by the California Board of Psychology to Lucille Akoy-Badu in recognition of your years of dedicated commitment to the protection of consumers of psychological services, your thoughtful contributions to the decision-making process, and your warmth and humanity as a member of the California Board of Psychology from February 12, 2009 to June 1, 2019. Ms. Akoy-Badu, will you come get your certificate? I will sign it later because my pen's not working.
Yes.
Can you do it from your seat? Okay.
You sign this while I'm doing it.
Yeah. Has anybody got a working pen? Thank you.
That one didn't work.
No.
Just want to say, can you all hear me? I just want to say thank you all. It's been my pleasure, and I was chatting with Dr. Horn that it has been my pleasure and truly an honor, as they say, to stand on the shoulders of giants. And I really mean that. The public members that we have had have been wonderful. The psychologist on the board, wonderful, excellent guidance in terms of the profession, and the staff. Where is Ms.? The staff is absolutely incredible, and I do say that, and I can't say it enough. And I do brag about the Board of Psychology and being a part of this board. And when out of all of the boards, this is the only one I've been on, but this is such a platinum standard, I think, for boards. And I have been on other boards before. And I just want to say thank all of you all for what you do and how you are so thoughtful in that process. Extremely fair in the decision-making process. We hear and listen, and that's what I was sharing with Dr. Horn. We listen. And one of the things about the staff is this: when there's a challenge or a problem, they really listen. And what can we do as a board to solve that? I think that is absolutely incredible. No problem is too hard. Or they say, we do the hard things because they are hard, as one president said. And I just cannot thank Mrs. Sork enough for bringing a level of leadership to this board that is unprecedented, truly. And you have some staff that is absolutely incredible. Sharp, witty, have a wonderful sense of humor. I just love them. And so on that note, I'm going to say thank you all. And it is bittersweet, you're right. And thank you, Mrs. Marks, truly, for doing such a good job. Thank all of you all. So on that note, thank you again.
Thank you very much, and you will be missed.
Oh, yeah, you guys, thank you.
Item number 4 is for public comment for items not on the agenda. I could beat the drum again about the fact that we are not going to comment on the names of licensees, but is there anyone that would like to make any public comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we're moving on to the President's report. If you look in your package under agenda item number 5, you'll find the 2009 meeting calendar and the locations of meetings. Some of those are shifting around as we speak, but we also are anticipating, with the departure of Ms. Jones and Ms. Akwebudu, some changes in committee membership, but at present it doesn't appear any changes need to be made to the current constitution. Some committees will probably be running a little light until we have new members, but until then, we will continue as we have been before. Okay, with all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sorek for the Executive Officer's report.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Included in your meeting packet is the Executive Officer report. We have had 2 hires in the enforcement unit, both enforcement analysts positions. We are also filling a limited term enforcement analyst position while we have a staff member on leave. So that's a limited term position. And we have no other organizational updates to provide at this time. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7 is the DCA executive update. I believe that's been moved till Friday morning. Christopher Castrillo from the executive office will be joining us in order to update us on recent developments regarding the Department of Consumer Affairs. Minutes? Can we move ahead to minutes? Okay. So we're going to go a little out of order since we've got a little extra time before we're going to start our hearing. And that being the case, I think we're going to move over to, what agenda item is it? 13. Thank you very much, Dr. Horn. Item number 13, discussion and possible approval of the board meeting minutes of February 7th to 8th, 2019. Does anybody have any comments they would like to make on those minutes? I've already turned mine in too. Anyone else? Would someone like to make a motion?
Dr. Phillips,
Yes.
I would just ask for you and Dr. Horn to let the other board members know the tenor of the comments that were sent in, so that when the board votes to approve the minutes, they know what they're approving, if there's
Absolutely.
anything substantive or if it's just
Absolutely.
grammar.
There were some grammatical changes, some word substitutions, but they didn't change the sentences, and some excisions of what I thought was superfluous material, over explanation of things, but there was no substantive change in the actual tone or content of the minutes.
And the same is true for me. No substantive comments or changes, but just similarly rewording. We might have clashed on our rewording. I don't know.
We might have.
But we'll go by the ones I amended.
I move that, Rita, I was just going to make the motion. I move that the board.
Press the microphone.
Sure. Can you hear me now? I move that the board, okay, I move that, no problem. I move that the board meeting minutes for February the 7th through the 8th be adopted with the changes that have been made with,
Just wait for a second.
oh, okay, with the changes that have been made by both Drs. Horn and Dr. Phillips.
I'd second that.
Okay. Is there any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none. Ms. Burns, would you please call the roll?
Akoi Badu.
Yes.
Fu.
Aye.
Harbsheets.
Yes.
Horn.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Tate.
Okay, well, we are just being so efficient that I think if it's not an inconvenience, Ms. Burns, can we move on to the budget report?
Absolutely. So, not in your combined, but in your hand carry item, there is a budget update. Let me open it up while I'm saying that.
Conference call. I'll be back by 11.
And so in the 2018-19 budget, the board has a budget of $5,290,000, including a general fund loan repayment of $3,800,000 and an estimated fund balance of $5,226,000. In the governor's 2019-2020 proposed budget, the board has a budget of $5,282,000. This item is for informational purposes only, provided are through fiscal month 8. Those are the, let me just scroll it down. The budget report, including all of the line items. Again, DCA does baseline budgeting, so it's all about how the number comes out at the end. And then you'll have also the attachments on non-discretionary versus discretionary spending, the fund condition, which also just shows us how many months in reserve we are in any given year, and then also our budgeted versus actuals charts for expenditures and revenue. And if you have any questions?
I'm just going to repeat something I've already discussed with Ms. Burns before, but I was a little shocked to see all the red. Typically, we don't see this much red on here, but it's just a question of the way monies are allocated at this moment. We're not anticipating that we're going to run significantly in the red at fiscal year end.
No. You will see that on the attachment A, we do expect the 1.2% reversion, which means we don't spend 1.2% and it goes back into our fund. And currently that is a little lower than normal due to some unexpected personnel costs and the fact that the board is setting aside some funds for facility costs. So we're saving up for those facility needs. So that is why there's a lower number, but the bottom line, we will not be in the red at the end of the year. And then, of course, hopefully sooner rather than later, Fiscal will finally start giving us more reports and we'll have a better grasp on things as we go along.
Are there any other questions from the board or comments? Any public comment? the public comment gallery is fairly not empty except for attorneys and staff members, so I'm not anticipating too much public comment at this point. Okay, well, Ms. Bernal's not able to be here till approximately 11 o'clock. Ms. Chung's not here. She won't be here till Friday?
Yes. No.
Tomorrow? I don't really see anything that we can move forward to, because policy and advocacy is, okay. Well, I think that's as efficient as we can be used with that excess time that we have. We have a hearing set at 11 a.m. I wasn't quite expecting that to go quite so quickly. So this will give more than ample time for the parties to get it set up, for the court reporter to get prepared, and so on and so forth. Anything further you'd like us to accomplish? Okay, well, we're going to adjourn till 11 o'clock when we start our hearing. Thank you. I would like to, for purposes of the record, take roll. So if you would go ahead, Ms. Burns.
Akoi-Badu? Here. Bernal? Here. Fu?
Here.
Harbsheets?
Here.
Horn? Here. Phillips?
Here.
Tate?
Here.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to open the record at this time. We hear in the matter of the petition for reinstatement of the revoked license of Leslie Ann Pearce before the Board of Psychology in case number 600-2018-000-800. This matter is being heard on Wednesday, April 24th, 2019 at approximately 11:10 a.m. in Los Angeles. My name is Jennifer M. Russell, and I'm the Administrative Law Judge presiding over the matter. The Office of Administrative Hearings number is 2019-03-0502. At this time, may I have appearance for the record?
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the board. Deputy Attorney General Brian Bill on behalf of the Attorney General's office.
I can't hear you. Could you turn the microphone on?
Would you please turn your mic on?
It is on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Perhaps you can state your name again.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the board. Deputy Attorney General Brian Bill on behalf of the Attorney General's office.
Thank you very much. And petitioner, would you please state your name for the record?
Leslie Price.
Thank you very much.
P-R-I-C-E, Price.
And I'll note for the record that Ms. Price, you are representing yourself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. At this time, counsel, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, should we address the documents first?
Okay, thank you. I will note for the record that prior to opening the record, counsel indicated that the exhibit packet contains confidential and personal information throughout the exhibits such that motion pursuant to Government Code 11425.20 and Title I of the California Code of Regulations, Section 1030, Subdivision A, regarding the protection of confidential information would be appropriate to seal Exhibits 3 and Exhibit 4 in their entirety. Are there any objections to the motion? Ms. Price?
No, I'm wondering if we can close the back door since it's confidential information. But no, I don't have any objections to that. Thank you.
Okay. Now, first, let's just deal with the motion to seal the exhibits. And so, since there are no objections, Exhibits 3 and 4 are sealed. Okay. Now, what I'm hearing from Ms. Price is a motion to close the hearing because of the nature of the information. Counsel, do you have any objections to closing the hearing?
I would, Your Honor. I believe this is meant to be a public hearing, and the people of the state of California have the right to at least have the opportunity to review this matter. I would suggest, however, that the complaining witness be referred to as Jane Doe, and I believe that Ms. Price has stated that throughout her documents that she has submitted to the board.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to deny the motion pursuant to Government Code 11425.20 subdivision A, which provides that a hearing shall be open to the public observation and that sufficient protections are in place pursuant to the order I just ruled on to protect the confidential information. In addition, at all times, we will refer to the client involved as Jane Doe. Thank you. Any other preliminary matters that we need to address at this time?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Brill, how would you like to proceed?
I'll proceed with opening, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, members of the board, we're here today to decide whether Ms. Price's request for reinstatement for license should be granted. In this matter, Ms. Price entered into a stipulated surrender of her license after an accusation was filed against her. The accusation alleged that she engaged in sexual misconduct with a patient. The victim in the matter, or the patient in the matter, referred to as Jane Doe, was referred to the petitioner for therapy through a nonprofit agency. Ms. Price began treating Jane in September or October of 2010. Regarding her treatment, you will hear today that Ms. Price does not believe that her sessions with Jane constituted therapy. After approximately 1 year of sessions, the professional relationship morphed into a hybrid caretaker, parent-child sexual relationship. You will hear that soon before forming this non-professional relationship, Ms. Price disclosed to Jane that she had a dream about her that involved breastfeeding her. Shortly after that disclosure, Ms. Price began to contact Jane via email regularly. Some of the emails are contained in the trial exhibits. The emails document the quick progression to a sexual relationship. You will hear that Ms. Price and Jane acted out her breastfeeding fantasies and engaged in other sexual conduct. And according to the documents, according to Jane, her statement, some of the sexual contact occurred at Ms. Price's office. As to the petition for reinstatement, you will hear that currently she believes that the relationship with Jane formed and continued because she was uncertain as to the appropriate therapist-patient boundaries. Ms. Price was also wasn't able to reflect about what patients wanted from her and what she could provide for patients. I anticipate that Ms. Price will assure the board that she will not repeat the same conduct, but I believe we won't hear today that Ms. Price understands why she willingly engaged in this conduct and actively sought it out. You will hear today that Ms. Price's rehabilitative efforts include 6 CE courses, various courses and teaching yoga, but that she did not seek therapy to address her boundary issues, and she obtained no psychological assessment to determine if she would possibly repeat the conduct. You will not hear that Ms. Price understands why she voluntarily engaged in the conduct. You will not hear why she sought a sexual relationship with a fragile patient. As such, at the end of this hearing, I'm going to request that you deny her request because Ms. Price has failed to prove her case by clear and convincing evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Price, typically you would make an opening statement. However, what I find is that self-represented litigants, instead of making a statement which summarizes the theory of their case, they're inclined to present evidence. And if you do that, I cannot take that into consideration because you're not yet under oath. So I am going to suggest that you wait until I have put you under oath, and then your statements would become part of the evidentiary record, and then that would be considered during the course of the board's deliberation. Okay? Yeah, can I get an affirmative yes?
I'm going to accept that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Counsel, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, I would like to admit the documents into evidence.
Okay.
First, I'll identify Exhibit 1, the reinstatement of the revoked license, and that is contained on pages AGO 00001 through AGO 00030. Your Honor, I believe that there's some information that should be redacted on this document, specifically on page 00001. The Ms. Price's address, phone number, and email, her driver's license, birth date, and social security number should all be redacted.
That information is now redacted from Exhibit 1 at AGO 00001. Ms. Price, these are jurisdictional documents. They are not evidence. They establish the authority to proceed in this matter. I'm going to admit the jurisdictional documents subject to the redacted information that was just identified on the record. Okay? Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the certificate of licensure, and that's contained on, that's bait stamp page AGO 00240.
Have you had an opportunity to review Exhibit 2, the certification of licensure?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any objections to Exhibit 2?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Your Honor, as we discussed prior to opening, Exhibit 3 will be sealed by the court, and I would ask that the court admit Exhibit 3, the petition for reinstatement report, as well as Exhibit 7 of the report, the transcript with Dr. Price, Exhibit 8 of the petition, Dr. Price's CV.
They can barely hear you back there. Can you adjust your microphone?
I'm sorry.
Just turn the microphone into
I'm too soft-spoken. Exhibit 9, the petition for reinstatement report, the emails dated January 13th, 2019. Exhibit 10 of the report, the transcript of the interview with character reference Vicky Breaksacker. Exhibit 11, transcript of interview with character reference Michael Rivera. Exhibit 12, the transcript of interview with character witness Lisa Magdaleno. And Exhibit 13, the transcript of interview with character reference Carrie Turner.
Dr. Price, and I apologize, I've been saying Mr. Price previously, but I'm correcting myself. Dr. Price, have you had an opportunity to review Exhibit 3 and the accompanying exhibits to that report identified as Exhibits 7 through 13?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any objections?
No, I do not.
Okay. Exhibit 3 and the accompanying attachments are admitted, and they're admitted under seal pursuant to my previous order.
And similar to Exhibit 3, I would ask that the court admit Exhibit 4 under seal, specifically the investigation report of the underlying matter, as well as Attachment 1, the letter from the complaining witness in the matter. Attachment 2, the consumer complaint from the referral agency, A Home Within. Attachment 3, multiple emails between Jane Doe and Ms. Price. Attachment 6, signed authorizations for release of records for A Home Within. Attachment 7, additional emails between Jane Doe and Dr. Price. Attachment 10, the records from A Home Within. And Attachment 14, the certification of records from A Home Within.
Dr. Price, have you had an opportunity to review Exhibit 4?
Yes.
Do you have any objections to Exhibit 4 and the accompanying attachments?
No, not at this time. No.
Thank you. Exhibit 4 is admitted pursuant to my previous order, sealing it. Mr. Brill?
Your Honor, subject to my right to cross-examine Ms. Price, I will rest my case.
Thank you. At this time, Dr. Price, the Deputy Attorney General has rested its case on the basis of the evidence that has just, documentary evidence that has just been admitted in the record. This is your opportunity to present your case. The purpose of the hearing is not to litigate the underlying allegations per se. The purpose of the hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to produce evidence of your rehabilitation and evidence that you would no longer reoffend if your license were to be reinstated. So at this time, how would you like to proceed? You may testify. You may call witnesses to testify on your behalf. You may also submit documents for consideration. During the course of your testimony or your witness's testimony, Mr. Brill may raise objections. He may also raise objections to the documents, if any, that you're offering, and I will rule on those objections, okay? So how would you like to proceed?
I guess testify on my behalf.
At this time?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? In these proceedings, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat. And I know that you previously introduced yourself, but so that we have a clear record, I'd like you to state your name for the record and to spell your name.
Okay. So my name is Leslie Price, Leslie, and my last name Price.
Okay, thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you just some preliminary questions. I do that actually for self-represented litigants so they can ease into the process. Sometimes it's rather intimidating and you may not know where to start. So I will give you a preface, so to speak. Can you briefly review for me your educational background?
My educational background, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I have a double master's in human behavior and clinical psychology. I have a doctorate degree in clinical psychology.
Are you currently employed?
Yes.
Where?
I am employed at Hartnell College, which is a community college in Salinas.
Can you please spell Hartnell?
Yes, Hartnell College, and that's in Salinas, California.
Thank you. In what capacity?
I'm an adjunct psychology professor.
How long have you held that position?
Going on 5 years. And then I have another position. I teach yoga and meditation at Seaside Yoga Sanctuary, and I believe I've been there about 3 years now.
Thank you. Okay. At this time, do you have any documents for the board's consideration?
I do not, but I would like to mention that it was stated that I only had 6 CEs, and I actually had 30. So if they're not within this document, I provided them to the investigator. But I've had over 30 CEs. So I wanted to correct that. And I'm happy to provide those again if need be.
Okay. Mr. Brill, are those documents included in the evidentiary packet that you have offered?
Your Honor, I have Exhibit 1 AGO 09 through AGO 14, proof of completion of various courses. I believe I stated that Ms. Price attended 6 CE courses. I don't know if you're, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I believe Ms. Price, sorry.
Go ahead.
I believe Ms. Price was talking about total hours of CE. I'm assuming that each CE course is worth 5 hours of continuing education? Okay.
I'm sorry. So, because we're on the record and there's a stenographer, I need to have affirmative statements. I can't have a nada or shake of the head. So, do you have is Mr. Brill's representation correct? What is the situation?
I would need to double check if it's 6 classes or 30 units. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I have completed the requirement when you get every 3 years with the Board of Psychology. When you're becoming relicensed, you have to complete a certain amount, and I have completed that amount.
So when you previously testified that you had 30 CEs, are you referring to the number of courses or are you referring to the number of credits?
The number of credits.
Thank
and
you.
I apologize if I misunderstood.
Okay. So it's, for the record, it's 30 CE credits, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Thank you.
It's anywhere from 28 to 32, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, please continue with your testimony at this time. Dr. Price?
Yes, I'm sorry, it was taking a minute.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure you understand I'm addressing you. If you need a moment, please take a moment.
Thank you. So as we opened today, there were 4 things that I wrote down that felt maybe different or misrepresented from my point of view. So I just wanted to address those 4 things. The first thing I'd like to address is the emails that are in this document. I'm not going to attest to whether I've written these emails or not. I'm not going to do that. However, I am absolutely going to say that, yes, I had an inappropriate relationship with the former patient. Absolutely, I did that. These emails may or may not have been something I wrote, but they're kind of beside the point to me. So I want to say that. The second thing I want to address is that I didn't seek counseling. That's not true. I don't have health insurance. I have not had health insurance in the last 5 years. And when I have been insured, I've been insured under the Medi-Cal policy. And unless I am suicidal, there is not counseling options available to me. Every 3 months or so, maybe every 6 months, I call 2 or 3 therapists and ask for a discounted rate and kind of share a little bit about why I need therapy, and I haven't been able to connect with anyone. So that I didn't seek counseling is not a true representation. So for me, what did I do instead? I started to go to yoga more often. I started to go to yoga more often. I started to go to a Buddhist chanting group more often, and these things kind of took the place, maybe. I also spoke to dear friends and a couple colleagues that I would say are very supportive, although not therapists, but supportive. So I wanted on the record that absolutely I did try to seek some sort of counseling. There were 2 other things that I wanted to speak about. One, and I just kind of wrote, this down briefly, so that I'm not able to reflect on what patients want or need. That was said in the opening statement. I've been in this helping field for over 30 years. And I really haven't had anything like this happen to me before. I do think in this case, this particular case, yes, I absolutely got confused and lost my boundary. And I lost my boundary. As I say this, please understand I take full responsibility for this. But I lost the boundary because what I was doing was therapy or not therapy, that I allowed Jane Doe's niece to come into the room often, and we played and we worked with her. And so I lost the understanding of maybe who the kind of identified patient was at that time. And then the last thing that I wanted to speak to was, it was stated twice that I won't say why I did this. And I think that's very interesting. I recognized a year before I met with the board and surrendered my license that I had been reported to the board. And at that time, I stopped accepting referrals because I knew I would be surrendering my license at some point or it would be revoked. I recognize that this one incident does not make me seem very responsible. However, I am. And why did I do this? It was a confusing case for me that I lost focus on who was the identified patient. And I don't know how to put this into words exactly. It was a pro bono case, not that it makes it okay, but just thinking about how did I get to this place. It just felt very different for me being pro bono, having the little one in the room all the time. I think I can make a statement later on, but that's all I have right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
A moment. Mr. Brill, would you like to examine the witness?
Yes, please. Good morning, Ms. Price. And I just want to state that I'm referring to you as Ms. Price because in this context, you do not have a license. It has no bearing on your level of education that you have achieved. I want to talk about the referral of Jane Doe to your office. Jane Doe was referred by a nonprofit agency, is that correct?
Yes,
And the agency, A Home Within, it deals with individuals in foster care, is that correct?
yes.
Okay. And did you ever receive any information regarding Jane Doe when she was referred to your office?
Other than a phone number and a name, no.
You never received any intake information from A Home Within?
No, at the time they did not have a contact counselor or like a someone within Sacramento County. They were working on getting someone within Sacramento County to help kind of with paperwork and transition and to lead a group, and 4 therapists who were helping. So no, at the time it did not.
Okay. So the first meeting with Jane, that occurred, I believe, sometime in, was it September or October of 2010?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And during that first meeting, Jane did not bring her 2-year-old niece, is that correct?
Correct.
And during that first meeting, did you do an intake of Ms. Doe?
Yes.
Okay. And did you discover her presenting issues?
At the time, yes, at the time she did go over some presenting issues, yes.
And did those issues include that she was previously in foster care as a child?
Yes.
Okay. And that she had experienced past sexual abuse?
No.
She never informed you of that? Well, let me rephrase that. She didn't inform you of that during your intake of Ms. Doe?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Did Ms. Doe inform you during the intake that she had potential questions regarding her sexuality?
No.
Okay. What did, if you can recall, what did Jane Doe tell you were the issues that she was having that brought you to your office?
That she was finishing a master's program, and that there were some family issues, and she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to finish or not, and that a friend was marrying her ex-boyfriend.
Okay. During the course of your professional relationship with Jane Doe, did she ever disclose any issues with depression?
I don't recall her ever stating that she was treated for depression. That yes, she had times of sad mood, but I don't ever recall her speaking about being treated by like a physician for depression. No.
And did your sessions include addressing her depression?
No.
Okay. And during the course of your professional relationship, did you discover that Jane was a victim of childhood sexual abuse?
During sessions within my office, no.
That was uncovered during your non-professional relationship?
Correct.
Okay. I believe you said in your statement prior to my questioning, as well as in the investigation of your petition for reinstatement, that the majority of your sessions involved you discussing with Jane issues with her niece, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was that issues in raising her niece?
Yes, partially yes.
Okay. And issues that the niece had herself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever diagnose Jane with any mental health issue?
No.
Okay. And you said that you were confused regarding who the actual patient was, is that correct?
Yes.
You knew that Jane was the individual that was referred to you?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And she was referred to you for the purposes of mental health therapy, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. At what point did Jane begin bringing her 2-year-old niece?
I don't have a date for you today, but it felt,
Let me rephrase that. I'm not asking for a specific date. Did Jane begin bringing her niece shortly after your first session with her?
yes.
Okay. And at that point, is that when you became confused as to who your actual patient was?
I didn't recognize my confusion until the therapeutic relationship was over.
So during the therapeutic relationship, who did you believe was your actual client?
I don't feel I took enough time to consider it, but of course Jane.
Okay.
Jane was my actual client.
Okay. Did you ever treat her 2-year-old niece?
I never diagnosed her niece. Did I offer suggestions on how to help her get to sleep or to help potty training or to help other things? Yes.
Okay. And I believe that you stated in your petition packet and during your interview with the investigator that you believe that your role in assisting Jane and her niece was more similar to a social worker role. Is that correct?
Yes.
And why did you believe that? Or why do you believe that now?
Because it was very different than my other clients. I didn't feel that I was, it didn't feel like I was doing therapy.
Yet you understood that Jane was referred to you for the purposes of therapy. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Did you recognize early on in your therapeutic relationship that you were not actually providing therapy to Jane?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you keep notes?
Yes, I did.
And what generally was the substance of the notes of your sessions?
I don't know that I can comment on that today. I don't know that I can recall.
Fair enough. You had a chance to review the emails that were referenced in my opening statement, correct?
Yes.
And in one of the emails Jane wrote to you, in Jane's interview, I apologize, in Jane's interview with the investigator in the underlying case, you read that investigation, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Jane indicated that she sought treatment for clinical depression from you, is that correct?
I saw that in the notes, yes.
And you disagree with that statement?
I was not doing treatment for clinical depression, no.
Okay. And Jane stated that she sought treatment for childhood sexual abuse from you. You read that in the investigation, correct?
Yes.
And do you disagree with that statement?
Yes, I disagree with that statement.
Okay. I'll move on. So specifically regarding the professional relationship, the duration was approximately October 2010 through August 2011. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And usually the sessions were held weekly, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and at some point you increased the sessions to twice a week?
At a certain point, yes, sessions were increased to twice a week, and that was in relation to Jane being experiencing a sense of stress. She stated to me because her niece was supposed to be adopted by her next door neighbors, and that wasn't going to happen anymore, and so she was experiencing some stress.
And did you treat her for that stress?
Yes, during that time, her and her niece came twice a week for 2 or 3 weeks before Jane was able to apparently become a foster mother for her niece, and her anxiety decreased.
And at that point, did you diagnose Jane with any diagnosable condition?
No, I did not.
Generally, when treating a patient, would you provide a diagnosis for someone who's experiencing stress?
That's a great question. It really depends on what's the need for a diagnosis. Is it based on insurance? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would give a diagnosis. If someone wasn't utilizing their insurance, I wasn't sure how effective or what the need might be to have a diagnosis.
Okay. In treating the stress during this period of time, did you treat that with talk therapy?
Yes.
Okay. So at some point in the relationship, you did provide therapy to Jane Doe?
Yes.
Okay. Can you estimate what percentage, if you can estimate, what percentage of the sessions between October 2010 and August 2011 would be considered, or did you engage in talk therapy?
I'm unable to give an answer to that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you engage in talk therapy in a time separate from these 2 or 3 weeks that we just discussed?
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Other than this period of time, the 2 or 3 weeks, did you ever discuss any other mental health condition that Jane was experiencing?
So I don't know if this is helpful, but I just want to say that irregardless of whether or not I saw Jane as a client, or if I thought I was doing social work stuff, or I identified her niece as the identified patient, that's what I thought, right? But Jane entered treatment to be my patient, and so I don't know that these questions feel helpful or like I can answer them, we can say this. We can say that I had a patient who I developed an inappropriate relationship with, if that is helpful.
I'm asking you these questions regarding specific therapy that you may have provided, because I believe you stated in your petition for reinstatement packet that you did not provide therapy to Jane Doe. Is that correct?
Was I that clear? I'm not sure that I said that. I can't imagine that I would have said that clearly. If,
Okay. During the professional relationship, you discovered that you were having feelings for Jane that were separate from a typical therapist-patient relationship. Is that fair to say?
No, I'm going to say no to that.
Okay. During the therapeutic relationship, you had, did you share with her a dream that you had about her?
No, I did not.
But you did, in fact, have a dream that you were mothering her. Is that correct?
No, I did not.
That never occurred?
No.
And you never had a dream or a fantasy that you were breastfeeding her?
No.
Okay. And once again, you read Jane's statement in the underlying investigation. You were aware that Jane stated in October 2011 that you shared a dream that you had, specifically that you were breastfeeding her. Do you disagree with that statement?
I disagree with that statement.
Okay. And you also read that Jane stated that after you disclosed this dream, you started contacting her via email regularly. Is that correct?
I disagree with that.
Okay. You've had a chance to read the emails, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to turn to page 268, and that's in Exhibit 4. Just let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
Okay, about a quarter of the way down from the top of the page, and I don't want to disclose the addresses, so I'm just going to ask you to read to yourself the email address next to the to line to Leslie Price. Does that email, was that your email at the time of the interaction with Ms. Doe?
Yes, this was an email I was using.
Okay, and can you look at the from line and review that email? Do you recognize that email address?
I'm not sure where that is. I'm sorry. Which one? Is it my email or
I'm
Jane's
sorry.
email? I'm sorry.
Jane's email.
Jane's email. Okay. Yes, I acknowledge that may have been her email. Yes.
Okay. And between September 2011 and the end of your non-professional relationship, you did send emails to Jane Doe. Is that correct? I'm not asking about whether these emails are true and correct. I'm saying generally you sent emails to Ms. Doe. Is that correct?
I'm going to say it's possible that there was an email or two sent.
Okay.
Sure.
So regarding the emails that are in Exhibit 4, pages 267 through 310, do you recall sending or receiving any of these emails?
No, I'm not familiar with these emails.
Okay.
And as I've stated, there was a time when Jane had complete access to my computer system, to my bank account, to most things in my life. And the emails in themselves, I'm not going to say I wrote them or didn't write them. I feel like I did not write these emails. This is not representation of me. However, that feels like a mute point to the relationship that I did develop with her.
Well, you understand that you provided statements to the board, correct?
Yes, I
And the
did.
statements are in your petition for reinstatement,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
And those statements are part of the information that the board is going to decide whether to grant your request or to deny it, correct?
Correct.
And so your statements need to be true and accurate, correct?
Correct.
And if there's information contained in the investigation report from the underlying case that calls your statements into question, you would agree that that's important information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so do you understand why I'm asking these questions?
I believe so. I believe that my my interview with the investigator is truthful and is more reflective than any of these emails.
Okay. You said that Jane had access to your email account, is that right?
She had access to my home computer, and I never closed my email at the time, so yes.
Okay. Did she know your password?
Yes.
And how did she know your password?
I don't know. She probably asked for it at one point. I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question.
And you said that Jane had access to your bank account, correct?
Yes.
And how did she have access to your bank account?
I provided her the information.
Okay. And you provided her that information when you were in a non-professional relationship with Jane, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I want to just discuss the non-professional relationship briefly, and I want to make sure I'm not taking up too much time. I believe you stated in your petition for reinstatement packet that the relationship developed due to uncertainty of boundaries due to a different type of clinical relationship, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain why you believe that, or how did you misunderstand the boundaries between you and Jane?
As I've previously stated, it was a pro bono relationship. And I had not seen anyone before for, a pro bono kind of existence. Again, I take full responsibility. A Home Within was going to be giving more resources, a group. I thought that might be helpful. It didn't happen. And then the concern with, or not concern, the connection with her niece.
Okay. After the relationship, the professional relationship ended in about August 2011, the non-professional relationship began, I believe you said 4 to 6 weeks after, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you stated that Jane initiated that first contact, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is it your recollection that Jane pursued you as a relationship outside the therapeutic relationship? Did you understand the question?
I did. I did, thank you. Jane reached out to me to watch her niece initially, yes.
Okay. And is it your opinion that Jane sought a sexual relationship with you?
I'm hesitant to answer these questions. Yesterday, I started receiving text messages from a Sacramento phone number.
And I'm going to object to this. This is...
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that means I can't go any further with that. Okay. Can you repeat your question?
Is it your opinion that Jane sought the sexual relationship with you?
Yes.
Okay. Is it your opinion that Jane pushed the sexual relationship upon you?
Yes.
And is it your opinion that you never wanted to have a sexual relationship with Jane?
Yes, but I think it is more complex than just saying a yes or no answer to those questions. I don't think that she truly wanted a sexual relationship with me. I think that she just didn't know how to maneuver the relationship, if I can say that.
Well,
The bottom line is, yes, I had an intimate relationship with a patient. Absolutely, that's the bottom line. Do I believe that she initiated a sexual relationship? Yes. I believe that at the time, that was how she understood, or how she knew to move through a relationship that felt important to her.
and when Jane sought the sexual relationship, did you acquiesce to her request, or did you also willingly participate?
Initially, I did not enter a sexual relationship with her, but yes, it did happen.
Okay. Well, I want to know your mindset. What were you thinking at the time? Were you, is the relationship something that you wanted, or something that you simply allowed to happen?
I simply allowed it to happen.
Okay. And at the time, you knew that that was a violation of your ethical responsibilities?
Yes, absolutely.
And the relationship with Jane Doe, that occurred, or that started in approximately September 2011, is that right?
I'm not sure of the date.
Okay. Fall 2011?
Yes.
Okay, and that lasted through 2013?
No, 2012.
Okay. Approximately when in 2012 did the relationship end?
I would say the end of the year, October, November.
Okay.
I don't know.
And when did you become aware that a complaint was filed against you and your license?
I think that it was probably possibly November 2012 or October 2012, I believe.
Okay.
So the board contacted me, I think, in I don't know, maybe May or June of 2013. So I think that I knew that Jane told me that this complaint had been made, and I think that was October 2012, I believe.
Just one moment, Your Honor. Now, I would like to talk about your rehabilitative efforts. And if I misspoke and stated that you never sought therapy, I apologize. Let me ask you this question. Did you ever receive therapy for what happened with Jane?
No.
Okay. And did you ever receive a psychological evaluation to prove to the board that you won't reoffend?
No.
Okay. And now, I believe that you stated in your petition that, well, let me ask you this. How can you assure the board that this type of incident will not occur again?
If I could just have a moment. Thank you. I didn't understand your question. I've wanted to work as a psychologist since I was a very small person, small child, and school wasn't my easiest thing. Getting through school was difficult, and I love the field. I love to help people. I understand that my boundaries were not good, and that I need to do that differently. I did not only hurt Jane, and I am sorry that I did hurt her, but that wasn't the only injury that I had, right? I hurt her family, her friends who had to take care of her after this. I hurt all of my other patients and my family and myself. I would never put myself or anyone else in this position again. I just wouldn't. What have I done? I have, since I wasn't able to maybe find a therapist, I've read every book out there on why people have boundary violations, boundary crossings. I have worked on becoming more mindful. Before this event, this series of events, I took yoga for years. It was a very different type of yoga that I took than what I teach and what I do today. I spend at least an hour a day in kind of meditation and my Buddhist practice. I am the same person per se, but I just am more mindful now. And I've worked at Hartnell for, going on 5 years, and I've had people, students, want to, I don't know, give me a ride home or meet me for pizza or something. And I'm very, very clear on my boundaries these days. Like, that is not my role. And I do not do that. Irregardless if I think they're, needing something else or not, I'm really clear on my boundaries these days. The pain that I have put people through is absolutely why I would never confuse my boundaries again. Absolutely not.
Now, regarding your boundaries being more clear, during your practice as a psychologist, you were able to establish boundaries with all of your other patients, correct?
Yes.
And you never crossed ethical boundaries with any of the other patients, correct?
Yes.
So once again, what was in your mind? Why did you decide to cross those ethical boundaries with Jane Doe?
She ended treatment because she got a full-time job. She called me, I don't know, weeks later, I don't know how many weeks, and said, I have to do this thing today and I don't have care for my niece, and do you mind watching her for an hour at a park? And I truly missed the niece, and I did it. And that's how it started.
Why did you continue that relationship?
I wanted to see the niece.
And why did you allow the relationship to proceed to a sexual relationship?
I am responsible for this relationship. Absolutely.
I understand that. My question is why? Why did you allow this sexual relationship to happen?
Jane and I had two different goals in this relationship, and I allowed it to become unhealthy. And when it became unhealthy, I thought, when it became unhealthy and I recognized what she was now wanting and needing from me, I thought, can this be the one time that a relationship goes better for her?
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying that you did this, you engaged in the sexual relationship to benefit Jane?
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay, so can you explain to me
What I'm saying is, once the relationship became very confusing and sexual activity had occurred, I thought, how do I be the one person who doesn't walk out on her? How do I be the one person who doesn't offend her?
So once again, my question is, why did you allow the sexual contact to happen in the first place?
I'm still thinking on how to phrase the answer to that. Because the relationship was trickier than I understood.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The relationship was trickier than I understood.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
I wanted to have a relationship with her and Allison. I'm so sorry. Her and the niece, absolutely.
Thank you for answering my questions, Ms. Price. I have nothing further.
Just a moment, please. Thank you. Dr. Pierce, would you like to make any additional statement? If you were represented by counsel, I would be asking counsel if he or she would like to redirect.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude the presentation of your case? Are you calling any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
No, I'm speaking.
Oh, I
to
apologize.
Are you calling any witnesses?
No, I am not.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'm going to give the members of the board an opportunity to ask questions if they have any, okay? Do you need a moment?
No. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for this witness? We could just go around. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And this question is, Dr. Price, so you were 30 years in practice, is that correct?
No, I've worked in the mental health field for 30 years. I started at the age of 18 working, for, at the time, Yolo County social services. So I've worked in social services psychology for 30 years. No.
Oh.
So my practice, I was only in practice for 3 years. Before that, I was in training and had an internship for maybe 5 years.
Oh, got it, thank you. And in your private practice or throughout your career, have you worked with kids before, with children?
Yes, I have.
So I'm just trying to understand when you mentioned the confusion as to the role and who was the patient, and then I also heard you say that you and Jane Doe had 2 goals. I'm just trying to really understand if you had from the beginning stated the client goals as it related to what was the growth, what was the care plan. And if it was for her, for the niece, could you help me understand that? Is it too loud?
My recollection is initially when Jane came in, she was most focused on the fact that her best friend was marrying her ex-boyfriend, and that kind of, so adjustment around that issue.
It was okay. And so then it was very specific to Jane Doe.
Yes, initially, yes.
And then in your private practice, when you first see a patient, do you have like a process? Is there like forms that they sign that identifies who the patient is, or consent, things like that?
Yes.
And so when you mentioned that this was a pro bono relationship, how was that different from a paying client?
That's a good question. I had never had and I get that it shouldn't matter, but on some level, for me, it felt more casual. And I on reflection, I get that that's not okay, but I am going to state that it felt more casual. I had not had a pro bono individual before, and it felt more casual.
So the intake was different?
No, the intake process was not different. No, they still completed all of the forms and the intake process. Yes, we did that, yes.
So on those forms, did Jane Doe identify as she was the patient?
Yes, she signed a consent form, yes.
Okay. And just one last question. When you mentioned towards the end that when you realized that this relationship had changed, you said that you had 2 goals. You stated that. What were those goals?
That Jane and I had 2 different goals is what I meant to say if I didn't clarify that. That we had 2 different goals, maybe.
And your goal was?
My goal, and this is after, this is when treatment ended, and this is a personal relationship.
Right.
My goal at that point was to try to figure out a way to not re-injure her by leaving her feeling like a victim.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
So, thank you, Dr. Price. I just have a couple of questions also for clarification. How long had you been a psychologist or in practice before this relationship with Jane Doe began?
It was brief, maybe, but possibly 3 to 6 months.
Okay, about 3 years?
3 to 6 months.
Oh, 3 to 6 months, okay. And you saw Jane Doe in your private practice?
Correct.
Okay. After, what you're saying is after the therapeutic relationship ended, y'all began a personal relationship.
Correct.
Okay, so I have a couple of other questions. You said that your relationship ended, if I heard you right, about the time that you learned that Jane Doe had filed a complaint. Is that right? Okay.
No. So let me think about the dates here. I would say there was 6 months at least between me learning and then the relationship ended. And the reason, so I don't know the specific dates, but I would say there was probably 6 months. I didn't, when she came to me that the relationship had been reported, she was in someone else's emails, and she came and said, somebody, this person has reported you to the board. And I said, okay. And I knew at that time I didn't want it in the relationship. I didn't want her to think I was ending the relationship because I was reported. So there was a time period in between being reported and ending the relationship, and she ended the relationship in the end. She had started seeing a new therapist, and that therapist said it's probably not great for you, and for you to continue on in a relationship here. And I said yes, I completely agree with that. But there was a period of time. I didn't want her to connect the two in her head, like all of a sudden I've been reported and now I'm no longer okay with having a relationship with her.
Okay, I have a couple of other questions. I am confused about the emails, at least what you're saying about the emails. Are you saying that you did not write those emails that are in here, and that you think Jane Doe might have written them because she had access to your email account?
I'm going to say I did not write those emails. Okay. Who wrote the emails? And they're not. I'm going to say I didn't write the emails.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to say I did not write the emails.
Okay. I'm assuming, I understand you were confused, but I just want to get this part clear. I'm assuming that you learned in your training that multiple relationships were something to be avoided, and that certainly sexual relationships were something to be avoided. Think how to ask what I'm thinking. Did you not see this, not, regardless of whether you were her therapist or not, you had a professional relationship with her?
Correct.
Did you not see this as a multiple relationship in addition to the professional relationship as a psychologist you had with her and with her niece?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say when the initial call came in for me to watch the niece, I had a moment of, okay, this is going to be a boundary crossing here. You shouldn't do this, and I still did it.
Do you have any idea why you did it? I know you said you missed the niece, which also, to my mind, suggests a bit of a boundary crossing.
Missing the niece? I don't know. That doesn't. I don't even know that feels like boundary crossing today. I mean, I have had patients when I was in private practice, and they were done. You know, therapy was terminated, and there would be times that I might miss them or might think of them. I did not reach out to them. So me missing the niece doesn't feel like a boundary crossing to me. Me connecting and saying, yes, I can watch her this afternoon, that's absolutely a crossing that turned into a violation.
Okay, yeah, I'll stand corrected
No,
on that.
and I'm just thinking for myself, like how I see it, and I want to be honest about like my thoughts. So, thank you for the question.
I think that's all. I do want to make a comment to the DAG.
So just a moment.
If I can.
I'm sorry, no, we're here
Okay.
to ask questions.
All right, then I'll just state it to Dr. Price.
It's a question.
Okay. You are still a doctor, right? You're not licensed, but your education hasn't been taken away, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir?
Good afternoon, Dr. Price. I just want to get some clarification as well, with my colleagues. Did you provide psychotherapy to Ms. Jane Doe?
No.
Could you describe to me from your education what are the components of psychotherapy?
So, a psychotherapy, if I had done a better job, then I would have done a better intake. I would have determined what exactly the issues were at hand that were happening for her, and I would have come up with a treatment plan for those issues. Our sessions were more specific to having her niece come in playing with her niece.
And when you received the referral from the nonprofit organization, that nonprofit organization made the referral for Ms. Doe, is that correct?
No, I was only given a name and a phone number. They said that they were in transition with a Sacramento representative. So no, I did not have an intake form, which would have been very helpful and something I should have made sure that I had.
My understanding from the transcripts in your conversation is you made one attempt to get that intake form, is that correct? Or to get additional information, is that correct?
I did.
And why did you stop at one?
Why did I stop at one? I felt that she was wanting to work on this issue about this relationship, and and I stopped there. It was inappropriate, and I should have gotten her records.
No worries. Thank you for that. And you've mentioned on several occasions today in your interview that you felt that this was different because it was a pro bono case. And in fact, previously you just said it felt more casual. Do you feel that pro bono clients should receive the same standard of care?
Absolutely.
And this was your first pro bono client, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you feel like this was a new type of client to you?
No.
What would you explain then the difference in the standard of care then from your perspective if this was not a new type of client for you?
Me allowing the niece in the room.
Okay. And are you familiar with APA Code of Ethics, by any chance?
Yes.
And Section 2 refers to competency of practice. Do you feel like you were competent to practice with with this patient who was pro bono that you felt like you didn't have, that you had a more casual professional relationship?
Yes, I was competent.
Okay. And finally, my last question was, at any time did you feel like you should refer this client out to another person to provide care?
No.
Why is that?
I didn't think I was being ineffective at the time.
So the relationship you had with the patient outside of the professional relationship did not constitute a referral?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood you. So when our professional relationship was over, and after that, did I feel like I should refer her to someone else?
No, during your 9-month. Go ahead.
During the 9 months,
Mm-hmm.
No, I did not feel ineffective during that time. I did not see the need for it.
And sorry, I know I said one last question, but that's prompted me. So this was pro bono, and you said you were not providing psychotherapy. So what was the basis of taking in the client?
So I accepted the referral to do therapy with her, absolutely. And as time went on, I allowed her niece to come into the room, and that felt very different with me. And we weren't talking about Jane or her concerns or things that were going on with her anymore. We were talking about the niece and incorporating the niece into her life and how the niece was doing and wasn't doing well.
Did you try to bring those conversations back to the client?
No, I did not.
Why is that?
Because I was confused on who the patient was.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Price.
Good afternoon, Dr. Price. You mentioned that you did not learn during the course of your professional relationship with Jane Doe that she had a history of sexual abuse. Is that right?
Yes.
But you did learn it in the context of the personal relationship.
Yes.
Did you see that as a risk factor relative to having a personal relationship with her?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you change your course of action when you recognized that?
Yes.
How?
I attempted to provide some separation between her and I, just in a day-to-day fashion of us, contacting each other every day. Like I tried to provide some distance. I tried to encourage her to do things with, her friends and her family. I attempted to find or gave her referrals to find a therapist at that point, before I was even reported to the board. I attempted to say this is not healthy for either of us.
And yet you continue to participate in the relationship.
Yes.
Okay. Once you got the complaint, or were aware of the fact that a complaint had been filed, you, if I understand your testimony correctly, continued in the relationship.
Yes.
And the relationship continued to be sexual.
I am not sure about that. The sexual component of the relationship was very small. It happened and it existed, and I want to be clear about that. But that was a very small component of the relationship. I am not sure at what point the sexual connection stopped. I do believe it was before maybe I heard that. I'm not sure. But there was a time when I provided her resources for therapists that I thought would be beneficial for her because our relationship was unhealthy.
Okay. When you became aware of the fact that a complaint had been filed against you, I think you made reference to the fact you recognized that you were going to have to surrender your license.
I recognized when I was given the information that it had been reported to the board that I would either, need to surrender it or it would be revoked, yes.
And what was your understanding as to why you would need to surrender your license?
Because I was having an inappropriate relationship with a former patient.
Okay. And yet you continued the relationship?
Yes.
Okay. If I understand the record of documents that have been introduced correctly, at some point you had a problem with someone stalking you?
Yes.
Okay. And without identifying that person, was that person a former patient of yours?
Yes.
Okay. If, let's say you were referred the niece, and you entered into your inappropriate relationship after the termination of the niece's therapy with the niece's guardian, would that still have been inappropriate?
Absolutely.
And whether it was pro bono or paid for, it was an inappropriate relationship?
Correct.
Okay. Was your confusion about the nature of the parameters of the relationship, or was your confusion about your boundaries?
My boundaries.
Okay. And what have you done to remedy that problem with your boundaries?
So I have, as I stated earlier, I've read as many things as I can find because I that was the best option for me at the time. I have not had any boundary violations, crossings, any concerns from school officials since I have taught at Hartnell. And I work with young adults who are often asking me for things that are not appropriate because they don't understand yet life and boundaries, and I have not had any concerns there brought to me by staff.
Okay. So you're analogizing requests from students to go to lunch or go out for a drink as equivalent to having sex with a patient?
No, it's absolutely very different.
So how can we be assured that you are not going to cross that boundary again?
Because I recognize the pain that I have caused Jane, her family, and all my other patients, and my family, and I will not put myself in that position again.
Was there a psychological vulnerability that put you in that position? Was there something in you were looking for out of that relationship?
No.
And you've had no therapy or to examine that?
Since this relationship, no, I have not.
Since that relationship?
No. I spent 7 years in therapy while I was going to school. But no.
Okay, thank you.
Just a moment.
Can I say something to one of the questions that he asked, or no?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So thank you for your question about a patient stalking me. Thank you. I want to address that clearly and state that when I was an intern at Fall Creek, I saw a patient for probably a period of about 5 years, 4 years maybe. I thought the referral was inappropriate from the time that I got that referral. I spoke to my supervisor several times, many times, about this referral being inappropriate, and she disagreed with me. When I went on my own into private practice, I did not accept that referral. I did not take that person with me to my private practice because I knew that that person could not be treated effectively by me in a private practice situation. So I want to mention that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Good afternoon, Dr. Price. Thank you for answering the questions. Okay, pull it closer. Thank you. Just a few questions. As a matter of fact, I think 3. I want to go back to the pro bono issue. And I know you had mentioned that it felt casual. Could you please describe what casual, as you treat patients, feel? Just give me 1 or 2 sentences. What does casual, how would you describe casual in treatment?
Yeah, I'm struggling. I'm struggling with, I guess, with the question, and maybe I shouldn't have used that term in consideration. Yes, somebody who seeks psychological treatment and is pro bono or paying, or their insurance is paying, or a victim witness pays, whoever is paying, they deserve the same care, and I recognize that, and so as I look at the case, as I look at this, like I think about what was different, like what happened, how did I allow this to happen, what was different. Her being pro bono would be, her treatment being, pro bono would be something that was different for me, and so something that I've thought about and identified as, so this, for whatever reason, is one factor that is different with this case than any other case you've had. So this in itself didn't work for you. Don't repeat this. So I'm not sure that I'm expressing it appropriately, I guess, to say like it was casual, or I just know that that was one difference between Jane and any other case that I've had or had in my own private practice.
Could you just give me 1 word for that difference, please, if you can? If not. No, that's okay.
I can't. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I apologize.
2 other questions quickly. You had mentioned that it felt like in the treatment of Jane, it felt like a social work role. Please explain that to me.
Okay. I can speak to that. So I felt often we were going over considerations for her niece, or I was providing phone numbers, or providing resources, or kind of thoughts about the niece and what might be helpful, what preschool, what program might be available, how do you reach out to Alta, like these types of things.
So let me just be clear in my mind. When you mention social work role, you see social workers as providers of resources as opposed to therapists? Do you see, is there a difference in your view of a social worker?
Absolutely, a social worker can also be a therapist. Absolutely. I do think that social workers in the degree of social work gives you more understanding of resources. When I have individuals who ask me these days, I only want to get a master's degree, I say, definitely look into a master's in social work, because I think it's more, it's usable as compared to a master's in psychology. That's pretty pigeonholed. Like, if you want to work at a hospital, if you want to work with hospice, you want to work with palliative care, if you have an MSW, you're probably going to have a little bit more understanding of those things. So I'm not trying to be disparaging against social workers in general.
Okay, one last question, and that is boundaries. And I just wanted to ask the question, oftentimes with boundaries, we don't just start doing the whole thing all at once. It starts with a little bit.
Absolutely.
Inch by inch. Yeah. As they said, a little leaven leavens the whole lump, so just a little bit. So my question is, what right now, and I think Dr. Phillips asked this question, alluded to this question, but I wanted to just, could you identify one thing, no matter how small it might be, just one thing where it would just give comfort that you have learned or you have begun the process of not overstepping boundaries, just no matter how small it might be. And not that I'm comparing one thing with the other, but just one little boundary issue that you have begun to identify and to address.
Okay, yes, thank you. And I don't want to compare this to that.
I understand.
But I often have students who will come to me and say, hey, can I come to your office hour? They come to my office hour and they don't want to speak about school. They want to tell me how they're going through this breakup, or they can't pay the rent, or they're feeling suicidal, or having depression or anxiety, or these types of things. I will meet with the student for about 15 minutes, and then I will provide them the resources that are on campus, the suicide prevention hotline, the crisis text line, these things that are more appropriate. I'm not the appropriate person to come to for these things. If you're suffering in class because you're not doing well, you're missing assignments, then that is my role, that's my job. One time I had a student who came to me before class started and said, when I leave this room, I'm going to walk in front of a bus. I stopped class, we hadn't even started, I packed my stuff up and I walked her down to the crisis unit, because I just thought, this is serious. Like, I don't want to let her out of my sight right now. I want to be with her. I went down, I waited for the crisis counselor to be available, 20 minutes, and I said, I have a student who has a very serious concern here for me, and great. I never spoke with that student again, ever, about what happened. She was with me for a full semester. I never asked her, how's it going in counseling? How are you doing? I didn't ask her any of those questions. They're not appropriate.
One really last question. Yeah. Did you did you go with the student by yourself, or did you get someone else to walk with you with the student?
No, I went by myself.
Okay.
It was downstairs, and I went by myself. We were there for about 10 minutes, and the doors were shut. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, do I call security and leave her in the hands of security? I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So I called my dean and said, I don't know that leaving her with security feels appropriate to me. Mm-hmm. What would you like me to do? And the dean said, I will send the supervisor down as soon as she's available. Okay. And I waited.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Price. I have a couple questions myself. We've talked about having a pro bono client seeming casual. I have one more kind of clarification I need. The question I have is, if you do see somebody on a pro bono basis, you're not getting paid, does it seem to you that they would maybe deserve a different level of treatment than somebody who you were getting paid cash or insurance?
No, they do not deserve a different level of treatment.
Okay. Can you explain? I know, I think you were just asked this question, but I didn't quite understand. what your thought process was then in identifying the treatment of Jane Doe to be more casual.
Maybe the statement of casual could be towards the treatment and not this pro bono or payment status. When I look at my relationship with Jane and how this happened, I identify what is different with her versus other patients and how I am here today. Right? So what was different with her? One of the things that was different was she was pro bono. If someone comes in pro bono, no, they do not deserve a different level of treatment. They deserve exactly what they would, what they would receive if they paid full price. Absolutely. So as I state that, I don't think that because she was pro bono, like I had a different level of respect for her as a patient. But when I identify what are the differences, that is something that comes up for me that I can now say, that did not work. That did not work. And for whatever reason, more casual on my thought process, more casual, she was more casual, like it didn't work for me. And that is a pattern I should not repeat.
Okay, thank you. At one point, you've referred to Jane Doe as filing the complaint, and then at another point, it was somebody else. It was unclear.
Okay, so I apologize if I did. My understanding and kind of what I've read in the report is the complaint was filed by someone else. It was not filed by Jane, and that it appears, and from my recollection at the time, that they wanted Jane to sign a release, and that she was resistant to doing that. And I wish I would have handled that differently. That the moment that I was informed that that complaint came in, I wish I would have handled that differently, to call the board myself and say, I know a complaint is there. Please don't bother her for a release. There's no need for a release. I am willing to come in and speak to you.
Okay, I noticed that you had written a letter to the brother of the person who you had seen, who ultimately you believed was stalking you.
Okay.
Can you explain how that was okay regarding confidentiality?
So I had a female who was stalking me, who was sleeping outside my home in her vehicle, had a loaded weapon at one point in a treatment room with me while I worked at Fall Creek, which is reported, had threatened my life. My cat went missing, and I had many other various things that were going on that I contacted police for. I was anxious for my life at that point.
So you had the address of her brother, it sounded like.
His email address?
His email
Yes.
address.
Yes.
Yes. So looking at that now, of course, you contacted the police, and I appreciate that. Did you choose to contact the brother because you felt the police weren't doing what they needed to do? I mean, I guess I'm struggling with the whole issue of confidentiality.
Okay.
Revealing to the brother that...
the brother had been in my office before. She had signed a release for him to come to a couple sessions. Also, her father had been in my office before. So I didn't feel like I was breaking confidentiality because I did have at some point a signed release because they were in my office for them to be part of sessions. So I know at the time I didn't take it lightly that I was contacting him, because it was for a different purpose than the signed release was for.
And were you still seeing the client at the time? So the
No, I was
release
not.
then actually
Was probably-
invalid. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I? Will this that we're speaking about, this patient, will this name be redacted from the record, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So just to further maybe shed some light on this, I believe that that she has recently gone to jail for stalking another therapist, and I've been contacted to testify, which of course I keep saying I'm not going to do that, but I think that now it is all taken care of. But I mean, it's a very serious case.
Absolutely. Very scary for you.
Mm.
No more questions?
Hi, Dr. Price. Thank you for coming and speaking with the board today. I just have two questions. You've made it very clear that you haven't sought out any psychological evaluations or therapy during this case. I understand you've had previous therapy.
Go ahead.
And then you've also made it very clear that you've read a lot of books. You said everything you can get your hands on. Just in 2 or 3 sentences, what information did you get from the books that you find helpful?
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that that I thought that I stated that I did attempt to seek therapy throughout this process, and that every 3 to 6 months that I do call, I don't know, 3 therapists and say this is kind of my situation, and I need something that is low fee because my insurance does not cover therapy. So I want to make that clear that I have.
You did.
Okay.
I meant receive services is what I should have said. I'm
okay.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, in everything that I've read, I now understand, and I appreciate the board of psychology, and maybe not people sitting around the table right now, but the board of psychology really wanting to educate people that therapy does not include sex, and as somebody stated, like it's not that simple. It's not that simple. It starts with like really one thing, and I teach an ethics course now. And I say, like, how is this going to happen? It's not going to be this simple. You're not going to wake up one morning and be like, I want to sleep with this patient. That is not how it really works. It's much more complex than that, and it does work by saying, I can watch the niece for an hour at a park. It's not at my house. Justifying that, right? So it's complex, and that we really need to be careful. And I wish that. And this is my responsibility, however, that we were trained as psychologists that it's you don't wake up one morning and hand the blue brochure to somebody.
Can I just interrupt? Actually, can I just repeat the question? So that
Sure.
I just want to make sure you heard. So you said you've read a lot about boundary violations.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to ask in 2 or 3 sentences, just what have you learned about yourself from all of your reading?
What have I learned about myself is that it is not that simple, and that boundary crossings happen. Seems like simple things, and they can become boundary violations very easily. And you have to make sure that you know what you're looking for, and also the other individual in the relationship, what they're looking for. You have to be very clear on those things.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. In your interview, you indicate that you were actually in a relationship when you started with the relationship with Jane Doe, and that you ended the relationship with your previous partner. Was that due to the relationship with Jane Doe or not?
No, it was not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At this time, Dr. Price, does this conclude the presentation of your evidence?
Oh, for
Yes.
me? Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Brew, do you have any other matters that we need to attend to?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. You conclude the presentation of your questioning of the witness also?
Yes,
And
Your
your documents?
The documents have been moved into evidence, Your Honor.
Thank
Correct.
you. Okay. Okay. I'm going to allow a brief closing statement, and for the purposes of the closing statement, Dr. Price, you are still under oath. Okay? So, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't believe that there's a specific roadmap for rehabilitation. I think each case is unique based upon the underlying acts. Here, the underlying act is probably the most serious violation a licensee can commit. As such, the level and quantity and quality of rehabilitative efforts is substantial, and the bar should be set high. In this matter, the petitioner has the burden of proof to prove by clear and convincing evidence that she's entitled to the requested relief. Clear and convincing evidence has been described as compelling or overwhelming. In this case, it appears that the rehabilitative efforts consist of 6 CE courses, reading books, and doing yoga. And if I misstated that, if there's anything else, then I certainly apologize. But there's no evidence, in fact, there was no therapy that was received to address the underlying issues, and there was no psychological evaluations conducted. We have no real proof that the petitioner has learned from her mistakes and has developed a plan to prevent this from happening in the future. We don't know why she did this. She hasn't specifically stated. And I would submit to you that if she can't answer why, how do you even start the rehabilitative process? Therefore, based on the lack of rehabilitation, I believe that the request should be denied. And I'll submit.
Thank you. This is your opportunity to make a closing statement.
So I'd like to start by saying doing yoga. So yoga, if you look into yoga, there are 8 limbs of yoga. Yoga is just not about doing some postures on the floor. Yoga is about making sure that you have a moral vow. It's about making sure that you have positive duty towards your community. It is about asana. Asana, that's the movement on the floor. It's also about your breath work. It's about being truthful and honest and non-harming to people. So this thought of doing yoga seems a little dismissive of exactly what that entails, doing yoga. But I understand that that's how it is portrayed often. This question again about why did I do this, and if I don't understand why I did this, then how do I move forward? So thank you for allowing me to address that again. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? My boundaries got confused. I didn't have the identified patient in my mind. I started to develop a personal relationship, which I allowed to grow. That relationship became confusing for both parties. And then I didn't want to just leave that relationship and leave this kind of abandonment situation again. I thought, maybe my ego got in the way there, that I could control this to some degree. The sexual nature of this relationship was very small in comparison to how this relationship happened or how it existed. Why did I do this? It became confusing, the boundary of who is the patient. My boundaries became confused, and then when I recognized that I was in a little bit over my head, My thought was, how do I get out of this relationship without injuring her even more? That's why I was in this relationship. That's how it happened. So thank you for allowing me to answer that again. I have thought about this every day for the last 5 years, and this is a great experience for me today to speak to it and have it be what it is going to be. I am responsible for my behavior and for hurting people, and I recognize that. And I would never put myself in that position again, and I would never put other people in that position again. I could have reapplied for my license a little bit earlier than I did, but I really wanted to make sure that I felt secure in who I was, my actions, why I did this, how I got to this point. I don't take this lightly to any degree. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you. At this time, the matter is submitted for decision. The record is closed. We're adjourned in this matter. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we have another one of these hearings scheduled at 1:30, but we're going to need to take a lunch break. This is our only opportunity to do so. So I would like to reconvene at 2 o'clock. It's 7 after 1 right now. Okay? We'll see you back here.
Good afternoon. We are on the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation regarding Adriana Camargo Fernandez before the Board of Psychology in case number 6002019000042. Today's date is Wednesday, April 24th, 2019. It's approximately 2 p.m. This matter is being heard in Los Angeles, California. My name is Jennifer M. Russell. I'm the Administrative Law Judge presiding over the matter for the Office of Administrative Hearings. The OAH case number is 2019-030497. Counsel, may I have appearance for the record, please?
Deputy Attorney General Brian Bill on behalf of the board. I'm sorry, on behalf of the Attorney General's office. Sorry about that. Deputy Attorney General Brian Bill on behalf of the Attorney General's office.
Thank you.
John Dratz Jr. on behalf of the petitioner, Dr. Camargo Fernandez, who's seated on my left.
Thank you. Counsel, would you please spell your last name for me?
D-R-A-T-Z.
Thank you very much. Okay. Before proceeding, are there any preliminary matters that I need to address? Mr. Brill?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Dratz?
I do have an exhibit, which is...
Adjust your microphone, and that way everybody can hear what you're saying. You need to talk closer to the microphone, please. Thank you.
I do have an exhibit, which is Dr. Camargo Fernandez's resume, or CD.
Okay.
And I've shown it to the Deputy Attorney General. And I've got many copies.
Okay. So would you like, why don't we wait until it's your turn to present your case, and at that time we will accept it, identify it, and admit it or not admit it in evidence. We'll deal with any evidentiary objections, if any. Okay? Okay. Okay. Mr. Brill, would you like to proceed with an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the board, we're here today to decide whether or not Dr. Camargo Fernandez should be granted the requested relief of an early termination of her probation. Dr. Camargo was placed on probation in 2016 after sustaining a DUI, driving under the influence conviction, in 2013. Today you will hear that the petitioner has performed generally well on probation. However, there has been 2 serious exceptions. The petitioner has received 2 violations, one for failure to check in for testing, and a second for failure to test when required. You will hear that the petitioner forgot to check in and forgot to test due to various life stressors. At the end of this hearing, if the board determines that the seriousness of the 2 violations outweighs the petitioner's rehabilitative efforts, then the petition must be denied.
Thank you. Mr. Dratz, do you have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. We want to thank the board and the Deputy Attorney General and the court for allowing us to present our case today. I've known Dr. Camargo Fernandez for approximately 4 years, and I do have the resume, which will give you her education and work history. I was planning on asking Dr. Camargo Fernandez questions to kind of lead her through her presentation. And I do have a couple of references to the probation report and one to the practice monitor, but since we don't have that in evidence, I can wait to make those statements regarding those. So we'll be talking mostly today about rehabilitation. Dr. Camargo Fernandez's time in AA, her time with her psychologist, her adherence to her probation conditions, and we will explain those 2 incidences. Yes, there were 2 incidences, as the Deputy Attorney General pointed out, and we can give you details, but I also want the court to know that Dr. Camargo Fernandez had to check in, and she looked at this before our hearing started, 1,176 times. Out of that, she missed 1. She was tested more than 150 times. I don't have the exact number. What you will have in evidence, I think there are 148, but that stops at the end of 2018. I think after you hear the Dr. Camargo Fernandez's testimony, and after you look at the evidence that will be in the record, that you will agree that Dr. Camargo Fernandez can practice safely, that she's got sufficient support to keep her off the problems that got her here, and that she can contribute fully as a licensed psychologist in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brill, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, if I could identify the documents in the trial binder and submit them into evidence. Exhibit 1 is the petition for early termination of probation. Exhibit AGO 001 through AGO 019.
Okay. Let me ask this question. Mr. Dratz, you've had an opportunity to review the exhibits being offered by Mr. Brill, exhibits 1 through 18.
I have, Your Honor.
Do you have any objections to any of those exhibits?
I do not. I would like the psychologist's report sealed because there's much sensitive information in that report.
And which exhibit number would that be?
Let's see, which number is that?
10, Your Honor.
Sorry?
10.
10? Mr. Brill, let me hear from you regarding the sealing of exhibit 10.
Your Honor, I've spoken with counsel and I agree that it should be submitted under seal.
Okay. Since the parties appear to be in agreement pursuant to Government Code 11425.20 and Title I of the California Code of Regulations, Section 1030, Subdivision A, I am sealing Exhibit 10. Thank you. Okay, so
Thank you, Your Honor.
with that sealing of Exhibit 10, you have no other objection, you have no objections to the admissibility of Exhibits 1 through 18, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor. No
Okay.
objection.
Exhibit 1 through 18 is moved in evidence.
At this point, I'll rest subject to my right to cross-examine Dr. Camargo Fernandez.
Thank you. Okay, sir, this is your opportunity to present your case. How would you like to proceed?
Are you addressing me, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to, I will be questioning Dr. Camargo Fernandez.
Okay, so let me put Dr. Camargo Fernandez under oath. Would you please stand? Raise your right hand. In these proceedings, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat and please state and spell your name for the record.
Adriana Camargo Fernandez. Adriana Camargo hyphen Fernandez.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Your Honor, we do have one exhibit that we'd like to offer into evidence, and that would be Dr. Camargo Fernandez's CV or resume. And I have copies, I believe, for everybody.
Would you please distribute those copies? And
Yes,
then
Your
I'm
Honor.
going to ask Mr. Brill if he has any objections to the exhibit. So let's distribute the copies.
Your Honor, I have no objection.
Let me make sure that's all we got. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Dr. Camargo Fernandez resume is marked as Exhibit A, and it's admitted as Exhibit A. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Camargo Fernandez, I would like to ask you a few questions, and after I've asked you questions and you've given your response, the board will have an opportunity to ask you questions as well as will the Deputy Attorney General. First thing I want to ask you is tell me a little bit about your living situation and your family. Where do you live?
I live in East Vale, which is just north of Norco and Corona in the Inland Empire.
And does anybody live there with you?
I live with my mother, who is 83, and my 27-year-old son, my 25-year-old daughter, and I think my younger brother is like 43 or 44.
And since you've been on probation with the board, have those same persons lived with you most of the time?
Most of the time they have lived with me, and in addition, my father lived with us until 2017 when he passed away.
Thank you. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
And who is your employer?
Entre Amigos.
Would you state that again?
Entre Amigos.
Thank you.
Would you also spell it for the record?
Yeah, ENTREAMIGO.
Thank you.
I have to think about it in Spanish.
How long have you worked at your place of employment?
I have worked with them since like 2002.
And I'm not going to go through the whole work history of Dr. Camargo Fernandez. That is in the exhibit. And if the board wishes to ask any questions, or the Deputy Attorney General or the court, that's fine, about the work experience, the education. Would you please describe your duties at your workplace?
I see families, individuals, children for either counseling, and some couples, either counseling, and I also do quite a bit of work with immigration. Families coming in needing evaluations for immigration purposes.
Okay, thank you. And Could you generalize, is there an economic level of the persons that you see?
I would say that they're mostly lower economic level, mostly Hispanic.
Okay. Do you have a history of working with Hispanic clients?
Yes, I do. I am bilingual, bicultural, so yes, it's usually called into play, yes.
All right. Is your employer aware that you're on probation?
Yes, yes.
And will you tell me when your probation started?
It started in February of 2016.
And do you know why you were on probation?
I was placed on probation because of 2 DUIs that I received and concern over my consumers and my patients.
Thank you. Do you attend AA?
Yes, I do.
How long have you been attending AA?
I think I started attending AA in 2014 to 2015, and then I attended. That was as part of my 18-month requirement for the courts, and then I attended after that ended. I attended a few more times, like 2, 3 more times, and then I stopped and I started again in February of 2016.
Between the time you stopped and started, did you attend any meetings in between that time?
I attended like 2 to 3 meetings, I think.
Okay. Now, how often do you attend AA?
I attend AA meetings 2 to 3 times a week.
And where are they located, the meetings themselves?
There's 2 different sites within Corona. One is at a Lutheran church, and the other is down in downtown Corona at the Serenity Club.
And was attending AA a requirement of your probation?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Would you briefly describe your involvement with AA since your probation started?
Since my probation started, my first year, I went once a week, which is what was required by my requirements was that I go to AA at least once a week. So I started going once a week for 1 full year. First, I had been going to the Serenity Club, and then I found the other group, which is a women's only group. In the other one at the Sober Sisters, Sunset Sisters, and I started going with them. I went 1 full year. Into May of the second year, I continued, but I got a sponsor in like May of 2017, and I started working with her in AA, and I started working on my 12 steps. What that meant was I went to 3 meetings now a week. I went to my home group, which is the one at the Lutheran Church, and then I went to the other women's group, and then I choose one of the other meetings, either a speaker meeting or a Sunday morning meeting, one of those meetings. In addition to that, in working with my sponsor, I had to start doing a group of 4 different books of readings every morning, and my morning prayers every morning. And I had a call in to her at 6:30 in the morning every day, but Friday and Saturday, which is the days that I have to be in the office. So I would call in and talk to her for about 30 minutes. Then on Fridays, I went to group on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday or Sunday. But on Friday evenings, I would do my book work with her at her house, and that was about an hour. And she'd give me these packets of questions and information that you had to look through the big book and answer the questions. And I would be sent home with homework until the next week that I had to do. That went on for about 1.5 years. And I think after about I don't know if it was a year or when, but I started having to she allowed me to cut back on the phone call, so I only had to call her Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday maybe. And it went from like having to call her like first 6 times to cut down to 5 times. And now I call her only 2 times. And now I call her on Monday mornings and Thursday mornings. But on Sunday, since we cut back the other calls, I have to give her, email her a letter, kind of summarizing my week. What went on, what were issues, what I was thinking, that sort of stuff. So I submit that every Sunday evening. The 2 meetings that I go to that are ladies' meetings, I usually attend with her. Also, during my meetings, I have carried out most of the services that there are to do, from making coffee to greeting to presenting the grapevine to presenting the literature stand and discussing the literature stand to leading meetings, to being secretary of meeting, to being treasurer of the meetings, to paying the bills when they need to be paid out. I've taken on all those commitments. I've also gone out to a couple of panels, a couple of times to rehabilitation homes. I've gone on retreats. I went on one, I think it was like a weekend retreat last, I think it was October, and I have another one scheduled to go on in September.
Okay. Do you intend to continue your participation in AA once your probation is over, whether it happens as a result of this or whether it goes the full extent?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I plan to continue at least 3 times a week. My other plans are to start sponsoring. I also want to start going into institutions, prisons.
And what would you do in the institutions?
You basically go in and lead and put on a meeting for people that obviously cannot leave the prisons.
An AA meeting?
An AA meeting.
Well, you've been on probation. Have you participated in any kind of psychotherapy or other counseling?
Yes, I go to psychotherapy once a week.
And when did that start?
That started about, I think it was about 5-6 months into my probation. That came after I had the psychological evaluation, and it was recommended that I go into therapy. So that happened like, I think, July or August of 2016.
Who's your therapist?
Dr. Gerhardt.
All right.
Would you please spell that name, please?
Garhart.
Thank you.
Once you no longer have to be on probation with the board, are you intending to continue in therapy?
Yes.
Okay. Has your therapy helped you?
Yes, it has.
Would you briefly describe how it's helped you?
My therapy has helped me to be able to, number one, recognize all the stresses that I had kind of just lived with and tolerated for a very long time, up to the point of my DUIs. It also has helped me a lot in being able to handle day-to-day situations and be able to think them through and resolve them in a positive way.
All right. And do you have a probation monitor or a person that you report to as part of your probation?
Yes, I do.
And who is that?
Curtis Gardner.
And has Mr. Gardner always been your probation monitor?
No, he started in 2017, like May or April, February. Before him, it was Barbara Tanner.
Do you have any obligations toward Mr. Gardner as far as things you have to do?
The normal ones, hand in my quarterly reports, Just call them if anything happens or anything is wrong.
And have you taken advantage of that?
A few times.
Okay. Have you had a practice monitor?
Yes, I have.
Was that a condition of your probation?
Yes, it was.
And who was that?
Her name is Dr. Cho, Naomi Cho.
And where do you meet Dr. Cho?
In my office.
So she comes to your workplace, is that correct?
Yes, from my understanding, that was a requirement. It had to be done in my office.
Okay. And when she is there, what goes on?
We'll talk about, for the first few minutes, what's going on, what are the cases, how many cases there are. Then she'll go off into a side waiting room, and she'll review all the files that I have of clients that I have seen. Then she comes back and we discuss them a little more, and that's it.
How long have you had a practice monitor?
All 3 years.
Does your practice monitor have to make any reports?
She makes a quarterly report like my psychotherapist does every 4 months.
And to the best of your knowledge, are those reports submitted to a probation officer?
Yes,
monitor? Okay. Since you started your probation, have you been drug tested?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us briefly the procedure for the drug testing.
Well, there's an app. Well, you don't have to use the app, actually. You have to call and check in with First Lab to see if you have to test. I downloaded an app, and what I do is in the morning, when I wake up, I tap on it, and it tells me whether I have to test that day. Then, depending on where I'm at, it can tell me locations that are close to me, but it'll only tell you within a certain mileage. If you want to have it like further out, you'd have to call and make arrangements, or if it's out of state, it's even more complicated. But basically, once you check and see if you have to go test, you go into one of these sites. It's observed testing, so you get the sheets, chain of command sheets, and you take them in, they fill them out, you fill in their paperwork, that you do the observed testing, and you watch the whole procedure of them taking it out of the box, give it to you, and then when you bring them back, you got to put it in the box, you got to seal it, you got to put little tapes on it, date them, and they put them in an envelope, and it goes off to FedEx.
Is there a cost associated with the drug testing?
Yes, it varies between sites. Within the sites, it can go from $28 a collection fee all the way up to $45 a collection fee, unless it's a blood sample. I had to do one of those. Those are more like $75 or so. That's the collection fee. Then when the lab gets it and they run it, then they charge you $46 per test.
Okay. And can you give me an estimate of the number of times you've actually been tested?
I don't know, but it's quite a few, because at times I've tested at least once a week. And there's been times like a couple of weeks ago that I tested like 5 times in 8 days. So it varies, but I know that it's a lot. The people at one particular site look at me and laugh when I come in. And they'll tell me, "It's you again? You're back again?" Gotta do what I gotta do.
All right. Have you ever violated your probation in any way?
I did on 2 occasions. One, I missed a check-in. This was after the death of my father. I think it was in August.
Of what year?
This would have been 2017.
Okay.
My father had passed away on March 3rd, and that day I had been making phone calls and taking care of credit cards and closing out accounts and doing that sort of stuff. And I just was overwhelmed with everything I was doing, and I just slipped my mind to even call in and check and see if I had to go test. My name didn't come up for testing, but I did test.
All right.
And then on the second time, ironically, it was also related to my dad. It was December of this past year, 2018, and I got up and I went down to start breakfast and ate, and I think I think there was several people in the house. I think my daughter was there. I got busy doing work on the computer, and then I went on and got something for lunch, came back, did some more work, and then there was going to be a memorial mass at the cemetery where my dad was buried for Christmas. So I went, and I just completely forgot. And then after I left there, I went by and picked up my son from church, came home, laid down, and I just completely forgot. And I think I woke up like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just was in like horror that I had forgotten. And I think I even called Mr. Gardner and the person who was replacing him because he was on vacation, and left a message. I knew that nobody was going to be there at 3:30 in the morning or 3 in the morning, but I figured, okay, they'll get the message when they come in. So when I thought it was time that they would be in the office, I think I left messages every half hour or so. I became a little obsessed. And they finally called me back on Friday. But I had also called that very morning my attorney, and I told him what happened. And he told me to go ahead and go test anyway. So I did test by noon the next morning. I did go in even though I wasn't asked, because my idea was that if I could get in that morning, maybe I could draw a blood test or something that was a stronger test that would show that it wasn't that I was trying to avoid because I was drinking or anything. I just forgot.
Thank you. Regarding those 2 violations, did you receive citations?
I did.
And were you fined as a
I
result?
was fined on the first one $1,000 and the second one $1,500.
Okay. Besides the costs that you've described regarding the testing and the citations, are there any other fees or costs that you've paid associated with your probation?
I paid restitution fees at the start, which was $2,000. I pay every year the monitoring fees, which are like between $1,800 and $2,000. I paid for the second evaluation, which was another $1,800. I pay my monitor $200 a week. I pay for the monitors and the psychotherapists to produce their quarterly reports. One's $175 and the other one's $150. Those are 4 times a year. I can't remember anymore.
That's all right. Once you were put on probation, did that affect your job at all?
It affects my job in that all the insurances that I was covered on dropped me, so I can't bill any more insurances. I have to basically see clients who are able to pay in cash.
Okay. What have you learned from probation?
I've learned a lot from probation. I'm actually very grateful that I was put on probation. If I hadn't been put on probation, I wouldn't have gone into the 12 steps and done my AA so thoroughly. And I wouldn't have had an opportunity to become a better person. So I've learned a lot from probation. I know that I have to be very respectful and very responsible toward my consumers, the consumers in general, and that I have a big responsibility to represent the board also, or psychology overall.
Did anything during your probation lead you to any conclusions about whether or not you were an alcoholic?
Did anything draw me to a conclusion? Yes, I would say that anybody who has 2 DUIs is definitely an alcoholic.
And what helped you realize that? Was it your AA meeting?
It was my AA meetings, yes. When I started going in 2016, and I went the first year, I still didn't think I was an alcoholic, but I knew that drinking just wasn't an option anymore. But I didn't think I was an alcoholic. But in being in the rooms and listening to the women, and not just to how they're different from me, but how they're very similar to me, I grew to understand that I definitely had a problem with alcohol, just like they did, and that I was an alcoholic, and that was not a life that I would ever return to.
When your probation is over, do you have any particularly goals that are different from while you were on probation? Would it affect your work status or your ability to look for jobs?
Well, it would have definitely affect my ability to work and look for employment. Yeah, I would like to work closer to where I'm living at now, to my home. As I said before, my mother is 83 years old, and she's needing more and more, not someone to be there 24/7, but someone to just kind of at least be close by, to be able to supervise, to be able to, I usually take her to all her medical appointments, but I need to be closer, to be able to reach home sooner. So I would like to work closer to where I'm living at now. I think that's it.
All right. Do you have a support group?
I have a support group. My support group is my immediate and my extended family, along with I'm going to say my nieces, but my nieces are not children. My nieces are in their 30s. One of them is also a psychologist. So I would say then people I work with, as well as all my sober sisters. I have over 30 sober sisters. And we go to one meeting and we show up at the other meeting, and they've been messaging me all morning. So they are my support group.
Thank you.
My sponsor, my grand sponsor, my grand sponsor, my grand sponsor.
All right, thank you. I believe that's all I have.
Mr. Breaux?
I just have a few questions. Dr. Camargo, regarding your first DUI in 2009, I believe that there was certain life stressors that contributed to your conviction. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think from my review of the records, the main issue was a bad marriage, essentially. Is that right?
That's what I thought at the time, but the fact is that I have a 10-year-old son who was born with a heart disorder, and he had his first medical emergency when he was 10. And he had 2 heart valves replaced, an aneurysm in 1 week. And he was hospitalized for 6 weeks, and it got really, really, really bad. They didn't think he was going to make it. One of his valves was mechanical, one is tissue. It's a cadaver. And when that valve gave out, which we all knew they only last 7 years, he was 17 years old, and once again, we were in crisis, and he was in surgery overnight, where it was a horrible, horrible surgery where they actually had to freeze his body and defrost him to replace part of his aortic, not the valve, but the vein, because it had tore, as well as replace the cadaver valve into a mechanical valve. So I think those stressors also kind of fed into our marriage also going bad. So I can't say it's just the marriage. The marriage was horrible, but I think that it was just a long string of stressors.
Let me ask you this. Compared to 2009, how have those life stressors, are they more manageable now?
They're much more manageable. My ex-husband is my ex-husband. He's been my ex-husband since 2014. My son is on Coumadin for life. He has a pacemaker, which was put in 2017. He still lives with me, so I'm able to let him be a 27-year-old adult. At the same time, I'm close enough to that I can monitor him as far as, have you gone to check in with your doctor on your blood test? Have you taken your medicine? I can walk in and look and see if his pill box is full or not. And I even suggested the pill box because, like, I think a month ago, his coumadin level had fallen down to a 1.5, which puts him at risk of a stroke. So we were able to get it up to a 2.8 within like 2 weeks because I insisted that he use the pill box. You know, so my stress is much more manageable as far as that. Another thing that used to stress me out a lot is his health insurance, all these other thoughts that run through parents' minds. And I'm much more comfortable with that nowadays. He is working, he does have his own health insurance through work, and there is Covered California. And, I know that he's going to be covered. And lastly, I know that he's not just my child, he's God's child.
And then with respect to the second DUI, there were the similar life stressors that contributed to that DUI in 2013. Is that fair to say?
In 2013, I had left the marriage since 2009, but my children, one of them, my daughter, actually came with me for a few months and didn't like the school, so she went back home and lived with her father for about a year and a half. My son was off in college, and I couldn't monitor what was going on with him, if he was taking his medicine, what he was doing. So that was very stressful for me, along with the fact that their father continued to send me harassing mail, letters, calls. So I was still under a lot of stress and a lot of concern.
And compared to now, compared to 2013, has your stressors, those specific stressors, have they decreased?
Yes.
And how do you handle stress now? Let me take a step back. Was stress one of your triggers for drinking?
Yes.
Okay. How do you handle the stress now to prevent you from relapsing?
I go walking, I go to 3 meetings a week, I talk with my sisters, my sober sisters. I pray every morning, I do my readings every morning, I do my meditation every morning, sometimes more than once, like today. I do my inventory in the night. I talk to my therapist, I talk to a lot of people about what, things that concern me and worry me.
Now, just briefly about the failure to check in for testing. I believe that happened in June 2017, is that right?
2017? Yes, that would be about right, yeah.
Okay. How often were you required to check in between the start of your probation to the date that you forgot to check in June 2017?
I believe I automatically did check in every day, but I'm not sure if I checked in every day from June to, from 2016 into the start of 2017. I'm not sure if we were required to check in every day, because at the beginning, you only had to check in 5 days a week. And I'm not sure at what point, but at one point that we received a letter saying that it had been changed and we were to check in 7 days a week.
And since the date of you're forgetting to check in, have you checked in every time you're required to?
Yes.
Okay. Now, regarding the failure to test, I believe that occurred on December 12th, 2018. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you tested the very next day, is that right?
Yes.
Was that a blood or a urine test?
I would have done a blood, but I didn't receive a call. I did a urine test.
Okay.
The chain of command form is different. So to do a blood test, so I couldn't have gone in. It just said, I'd like it to be a blood test instead.
And that test was negative, correct?
It was, as far as I know, yeah.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Would you like to redirect, Mr. Dratz?
Excuse me, Your Honor?
Would you like to redirect?
No, Your Honor, as long as I get a closing statement.
Okay. I take it then that's the conclusion of the presentation of your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Brill, you completed your presentation as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we can go to closing. Let's hear from you, Mr. Brill. Oh, I'm very sorry. I'm so used to being solo. I forgot that I'm sharing the authority. At this time, I will allow members of the board to ask Dr. Camargo Fernandez questions.
Thank you.
No questions.
No questions?
Just a couple quick questions. And I should also say that I've been in recovery 26 years. I'm a member of the program. Your primary drug of choice was alcohol,
Yes.
but there were times you abused other drugs.
There was one time, yeah.
Methamphetamine?
Yes.
Okay, and that was your husband's predominant problem?
Yes.
There were 2 citations. From what I had read in the probation file, and this may not be the case any longer, I believe you had not paid the second citation. Has that now been paid?
I don't understand what?
Well, there was a citation for the first violation of probation, correct?
Yes.
And then there was a citation for the second.
Yes.
Did you pay both of those?
I paid the first one. I'm making payments on the second.
Okay. And what is your sobriety birthday?
I consider my sobriety birthday to be February 1st, 2016.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Camargo Fernandez, for being here. I have no questions.
No questions.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. If that's it, I think we can go to closing at this time. Had to be cautious. Okay. Mr. Britt?
Your Honor, it appears that Dr. Camargo Fernandez has proven that she has rehabilitated herself through AA, therapy, and a change of life conditions. She's accepted responsibility without equivocation, and her probation performance has been generally good. The 2 violations, I would submit that the reason for failure to check in and failure to test are certainly plausible. And regarding the failure to test, she tested negative the next day. So I believe that it appears that the rehabilitative efforts and general performance on probation outweigh the negative impact of the violations.
Thank you. Mr. Katz?
Your Honor, I've been around long enough to know when not to say too much, so. So we will submit on the record.
Thank you very much. The matter is submitted, the record is closed, and we're adjourned in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Gina, we can go into closed session.
The board will now meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, subsection C, subsection 3, to discuss disciplinary matters, including the above petitions, proposed decisions, stipulations, petitions for reconsideration, and remands. Depending on scheduling, closed session may continue into tomorrow morning as it relates to things that don't involve the administrative law judge. And with that in mind, we'll go into closed session. We will be coming back out into open session to adjourn the meeting for the day, but we will not be conducting any substantive business in open session. Thank you.
Thank you.